Welcome to the show where high achieving women ditch the stress without losing the success. I'm Janessa Finley Ford. I'm a coach, healer, and fierce advocate for mastering the art of being human. Because you weren't born to burn out, you were born to rise. And this is where science meets spirit and ambition becomes alignment. And I don't do it alone. So let's meet the other voice behind the mission.
Hello, everybody, and I'm SJ. I'm a results-driven leader who leads with conviction and strength, setting an unapologetic standard of excellence. I build high-trust communities where candor and accountability forge dependable leaders. And as a certified crystal healer and shamanic earth and energy medicine practitioner, I blend science, spirit, and strategy together to rewire energetic patterns for peace, potency, and purpose.
So, on today's show, we're really going to call out where we manipulate and dress it up and call it good intentions. I think there's a saying that goes something like the path to hell is paved in good intentions. So, we're going to dive into the layer of leadership that most people don't talk about. You hear all about the polished version, the empowered version, the fully expressed, I've done all the work version. And today we're going to dive into the shadow. Because what looks like generosity, emotional depth, loyalty, even calm on the surface can carry something very different underneath. There can be control, attachment, avoidance, manipulation, and not in the way that most people think. It's not calculated or even malicious, simply patterned. It's automatic. It happens without you even thinking about it. And because the unseen layer of leadership is energetic before it's behavioral, we have to talk about it. Because when that energy is distorted, it doesn't matter how kind or thoughtful or even self-aware you believe that you are. People will feel the pull. They're going to feel the subtle pressure, the unspoken expectation, the emotional undertow. And this is what specifically we're calling the shadow feminine, where giving becomes a way to create obligation and hook others in, or where emotional intensity becomes a way to hold attention. And so, really, it's just power over, or where silence becomes a form of control. Even loyalty gets tested instead of trusted. So, actually, every Enneagram type has a version of this, a way that the feminine distorts when it's not grounded in self-trust. So that's what we're going to bring you back to here this evening, anchor you back into your self-trust and expose the way that you distort some good intentioned behavior to manipulate. So here's the part that really matters for leadership. This isn't about being too emotional. It's not about being unconsciously influential in ways that erode trust. True feminine power does not need to pull, prove, or persuade. It leads through presence, it moves through clarity, and it holds without gripping or white knuckling it. So today, we're not making this pretty. We are making it honest. And we're looking at where each Enneagram type gets subtly manipulative and what it actually takes to lead without distortion. So let's open our eyes. SJ, where do you want to jump in and start the conversation today?
Well, do you want to start with your funny story and then we can move into the head points?
I already forgot about self-manipulation. Let's talk about self-manipulation really quickly. So this story is really funny by the sake of like insanity, if we're being honest. So last week, I did a thing. And as I did the thing, I realized this is something I do to myself all the time. And it's like good intentioned, my inner motivation. So I had a day where I was not feeling top 10. Really wish I would have called in, but I had a lot of things on my calendar that day, and I had scheduled some time off. And as deadlines always happen to fall, they all fall together. And so when I woke up that morning and I'm like, oh, is calling in an option? Also, I agreed to cover someone else's team while they were out. So if I had called in, I was going to be leaving two teams on someone covering for me. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. I'm going to go. I'm going to go today. And I promised myself that if I feel like this tomorrow when I wake up, I'll call in tomorrow. So then I moved everything else that I had for the following day, which was the last day I was working last week, onto the day of me feeling like garbage, like a big just can of trash. Like this is motivating, right? This is so smart. And as the day went on, of course, then I balanced some energy, do the inner work. I started feeling better and better as the day went on. And I'm like, look at me. I did more stuff on a day when I felt like, you know, garbage than on a regular day, all because I've really manipulated myself that I could have the next day off if I didn't feel well. But the next day came and I felt fine. So I'm like, why would I not go to work today? I feel great. So I got up and I went to work. And it was on that second day that I stopped and I'm like, I can't even count how many times I've done this to myself in my lifetime. Like, this is my inner manipulation, good intention that dresses up and shows up every time I need a little extra oomph to tackle something. I'm like, where is my self-compassion? Where is my, I'll reschedule or I'll figure it out? But I actually have also no regrets. So somewhere in there, there's a balance to be had, and I feel like I'm pretty close. It's probably just not moving everything the next day onto the day of not feeling well. But these are the things we do to ourselves. And we think that, I don't know, it's something swell, and then pat ourselves on the back. But the majority of this conversation here today is going to be how we do it outwardly to other people. So if you can spin it internal and see how you do it to yourself, you get extra bonus points.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of just set some groundwork too for the terms. So you've heard us talk about dark feminine, and dark feminine does not mean imbalanced feminine. It is a feminine energetic that to me feels like kind of the bridge between the light feminine and masculine energetics. Like she lives somewhere in between the two, but she is still a balanced energy. Whereas when you hear us talk today about the shadow feminine, that is an imbalance of the feminine energetics, whether it be light feminine, dark feminine, doesn't really matter, but it's an imbalance of the feminine side or the energetics. And every Enneatype has feminine and masculine aspects to them. Every being has both aspects to them as well. And as we move through this, every single Enneagram type is trying to solve the following, like, how do I get my needs met without risking rejection, without, running into obstacles? Like, how do I get what I need in the easiest path possible? It's just through the different processing centers of the Enneatypes. Oftentimes, though, that shadow feminine or the imbalanced feminine aspects can answer this through a perception of what you believe is true about safety and connection. So, what does your being believe is true about safety and connection? Like, what do you have to do to get or to even lean into having those needs met? Under the context of where that belief got wired in. When did you get this? Is it through your Enneatype? Is it through nature? Is it through childhood experience? Where did it come in? And then also taking a look at that last portion of permission. Have you ever allowed yourself to choose something different instead to see what happens? Like that permission to do it differently than the way you are wired, either through your Enneatype or through your nurture, your environment. There's a deeper layer to this though, but when your first strategy, which is that innate, like this is who I am, in theory, doesn't work, you escalate. And that escalation is what people truly feel in the imbalanced or the shadow feminine. When there's that escalation of I have to overpower or manipulate in order to get whatever that need is that's missing. This is where you really start to see that imbalance come forward. And today we're going to start with the head points. So we'll start with the Enneagram 5 first, which, I feel like the feminine here that is imbalanced, that shadow feminine is going to look like strategic withdrawal or like an entire energetic lockout. So the perception of that Enneagram 5 could be if I give too much, I'll be depleted or entirely consumed. Like there will be nothing left of me. I don't have the energy to do this. So I have to hoard some of those resources. So your energy can feel limited or intruded upon. And so you learned how to conserve it, often by withdrawing, removing yourself from the situation, or even possibly by trying to, this I feel like is more masculine than the feminine. I feel like the feminine is more in the withdrawal. The masculine imbalance, though, of the five can look like trying to overpower through knowledge. Like, if I know it, you all to death, then you'll go away eventually too. But the whole goal is to be left alone typically. Some of those like surface level patterns of the Enneagram fives that I've observed are distance or observing, but not really engaging. So they'll be physically in the room, but it feels like they're not really even present. So when you go deeper into that shadow feminine, really looking at when you feel overwhelmed, you don't just withdraw though, you completely cut off access. You cut off access to your knowledge, your intellect, you cut it off emotionally, relationally, entirely energetic as well. Like you just completely keep people on the outside where they're trying to figure out how to get in. And the control aspect, right, is that you really access to you becomes the currency. Like you can have access to me if you don't drain me, or if you have the same belief system that I have, or if you don't challenge me outside of my thought patterns. So, where we can kind of lean into that growth edge of an Enneagram 5 is to take a look and just say, you know what, maybe I'm allowed to stay engaged without losing myself. Like, I don't have to agree with the rhetoric or the ideas, but I can stay fully present and engaged without completely having to lose who I am as well. So just, small shifts I think are important. So just trying to stay present 10% longer than you want to. If it's a 1 hour meeting, try to really be there for 10 minutes of that meeting without retreating. Really lean into, I'm going to engage regardless of that ick factor for 10 minutes and just see how much further you can expand that as you lean into these options of staying present rather than kind of disassociating from the situation and the people in the room.
So one of the ways I've seen a five withdraw recently in my workplace was with not coming to the source, to me, with concerns, questions, clarity. And they talk sideways, really not withholding the standard.
Mhm.
And when I sat down to chat with them about it, I'm like, I just don't understand why this is happening. Like, it's not even logical, right? Because you are performing above the standard always. So if you have concerns, why wouldn't you come to me? And they just got the biggest smile when I was like, this isn't even logical to me. And so you'll see that withdrawal show up in a lot of different ways in the workplace. I don't want you to just think that it means that they shut down, even though that's probably the most common way you're going to see it, but it's going to show up in other ways. And I think that the good intention that it often presents as is independence. I'm just independent. I work really well on my own. I'm just diving in, getting the thing done. Well, yes, and also there's a balance between being so far withdrawn from the team and being independent and getting your things done. So I feel like that's really what we see with the five as far as the good intention, that it is actually a manipulation strategy for keeping them safe so that they have enough energy and they don't overgive and they don't deplete themselves. And so, really, to return to balance, it's a repeat of what SJ was talking about, where you engage before you feel fully ready. And that's just the real deal of it. You're going to have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone just a little bit, which is true for every type and everything that we are going to talk about here today. So, moving on to our Enneagram sixes. When they are working within their shadow strategy, it too is control or withdrawal, but it's going to often show up in a form of testing loyalty. So you're going to see a lot of questioning, probing. Maybe they're even coming up creating scenarios to see how might they play out, but what if this, what if that, to assess the trust of what your answers might be and how you'd handle that situation. They're going to look for certainty through other people's responses. So we've talked a lot here in the past about how the sixes will pull and ask other people how they're going to do things. That includes you. Definitely is going to include you. So be on the lookout for that with your Enneagram sixes. And, a power move with the Enneagram six is always to turn them back to their own knowing and their own inner power in the places where that is appropriate. But also with this testing loyalty, they're going to indirectly test instead of directly trusting. So trust is a really deep growth edge for the Enneagram 6. It does not come naturally, and they're constantly going to test the waters in one way or another. You'll see those show up in a lot of different strategies and scenarios, and it all comes back to what's going on underneath the surface is that trust. So what they're trying to do is verify you, because if they can verify, if they find you credible, if they can build some level of trust there, then they can relax. But the good intention here is that they might try to dress it up as discernment when it's actually fear looking for those guarantees that give them that false illusion of safety. And so where they can return back to power, if you are a six, the way for you to return back to your power is to choose trust instead of testing it. And it really can be a choice, even though that feels pretty unsafe sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to have a lot of what Janessa just said, but not just situations or decision points. Do I see the Enneagram sixes that have that shadow feminine coming forward? They don't just test those items, they also test people for loyalty and to see, like, polling the audience, where does the majority of the people land? Who are the outsiders? Who is the insider? Which can be a little bit of a manipulation tactic or entirely a manipulation tactic for them then to decide which side of that coin do they want to sit on then? Which one are they going to choose? So while they are loyalty testing other people, they're often betraying the exact same people that they're loyalty testing through not being honest. So there can often be a lot of lying by omission that can happen with the shadow feminine of the Enneagram 6, where they don't outwardly tell you lies, but they definitely don't tell you that the other leader in your group disagrees with your perspective. They just may run back to that person and say, well, this one thinks this. So there's this disharmony that's created between their pulling and gathering of the information, because it's not just testing the situation or the decision points, it's testing the entire team to see which water is hotter, which one is going to burn more than the other, and then deciding which side of that they can fall on. And again, I want everybody to keep in perspective as we're moving through this. This is not none of these items are balanced Enneagrams, right? So when you're centered and balanced within your Ennea 6, you're not going to lean into this as your default setting of I'm going to behave this way every day, right? This is an imbalanced setting within each of the Ennea types as well. But it's something that once you have the awareness that this is a strategy that your Ennea type currently or commonly runs, then you can see it when it starts to happen within yourself, and then you can interject and choose a different option once you can see it or feel it. Once we get to the heart points, you'll be able to notice a lot of those energetics coming forward to where you probably just need to take a moment, drink some water, maybe have a night's sleep, and then decide what to do. But this is definitely a stress point within each of the Ennea types. And the perception or the tale that the Enneagram 6 will try to sell, is, well, if I don't verify first, then I could be wrong, or I could get hurt, or something bad would happen, right? So there's always a justification within each of the Ennea types for the perception of, like, why did I do it, right? Like, of course, I am the hero in my story. I'm not the villain. Like, I could never be the villain. I must be the hero or the damsel in distress, but never the villain, right? Um, the thing is, though, is when you are constantly loyalty testing people, trust is exactly what's broken down then, because you're inconsistent, the energetics are inconsistent, and then everybody becomes more vigilant on the team. So the very thing that you didn't want to experience is actually the very thing that you're creating, which is lack of trust, hypervigilance within, and questioning, checking, analyzing from all of the people. Or worst yet, for the Enneagram 6, people will stop talking to you once they figure out that this is a strategy that's being employed. So when you escalate and lean into this, you lose the reassurance that you're actually seeking as well. So you may find yourself continually repeating the same question, increasing the pressure through passivity of, I'm going to ask the question again, just a little bit different, or you'll shift the angles, or you'll look for cracks within the description or the logic of the person too. So you try to force certainty out of uncertainty, and oftentimes the other individuals don't have certainty to give you either, right? It's just a educated guess that we are going to make a decision on, and that's all they have. So where you can really lean into your power system as an Enneagram 6 is what happens if you allow yourself to just experience trust without having to proof stack? Like, what happens if you just lean into, I'm going to trust that what is being said is true? I'm sure you verified up until that point, but also making your own decision before leaning into polling more people to see where they fall. Like, give yourself time to get one opinion and see how you feel or what you think about it before you move on to the next person. And also practicing small shifts, let one answer be enough. Just one answer, and that's it. Even if your system is craving for more and more and more and more. And just see what happens as you lean into that. Enneagram 7s, the best Enneatype, right? Moving into this, it's not the best Enneatype, but it's my Enneatype. And all Enneagram 7s will tell you we are the best Enneatype. So here we are. That is also part of our problem. I would say that we lean into avoidant charm, and then the burn and bolt strategy is probably one of our favorites when we fear something is going to hurt or be painful. Our perception is often like, if I get stuck in experiencing this pain, I'm going to lose my ability to deliver or my freedom, or there's always loss with the Enneagram 7. Like, I'm being constrained, I'm being confined as the perception coming to play. Oh, pain or restriction feels so suffocating to the Enneagram 7 that we'll really do just about anything to not experience it, to include, we have learned how to move really fast. And that's fast in thoughts, that's fast in action when we're stressed. Now, nobody can out efficiency an Enneagram 1 with their planning and all of that, but we have learned that our wit, our mouth, and all of those things, if they move really fast, it is difficult for the vast majority of people to catch up or keep up with that. And if you top that you're more of a wing 8, you're also adding in a huge layer of intensity that is going to be really difficult for other people to really want to sit in with you. That is truly to our detriment, though, if what we are looking for are authentic relationships built upon trust. At the surface level, we're going to lean into optimism, reframing, and avoidance. So at the surface, that's what we're going to try to do. The optimism, when the shadow feminine is out of balance, is really toxic. It is toxic positivity. It is disgusting. And it is also very, what's the word, where you don't really consider the other person in that aspect, or you diminish their feelings, their sentiments, their experience. I can't think of the word, but it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me, I'm sure, at some point.
Gaslight?
Well, we definitely gaslight. That is not what I was going to say, but Enneagram 7s are amazing gaslighters for sure. But we diminish the other individual's experience or feelings, and we feel really condescending when we're in that space too, of like, oh, well, at least you're not starving somewhere. Well, okay, sure, but I still have a broken leg. So thank you. I guess I'm not hungry. However, my leg is still broke. What am I supposed to do with that? And you're like, well, you don't need a cheeseburger, so that's good. So it's not very helpful. It's also pretty logical, and it is entirely an avoidance pattern that we're doing. Whenever we feel trapped, though, the shadow feminine of the Enneagram 7 doesn't just leave. She ruptures everything, she burns down the bridges, and then makes sure that there is no coming back. There is no bridge left that we can maintain anything, and then she will leave. Then she will ghost the person because, you're trying to say something sharp or make a sudden decision or break the dynamic, and then you exit because you want there to be no path of return back. We think often in our heads, unconsciously, but if we were honest, if this is going to hurt me, then I'm going to end it on my terms. If there is even a possibility that that other person has power over me and is going to make me feel fear or hurt me, that I want to end it first. And I want to do it so explosively that I can't possibly be seen as weak. Um, and I just wonder, what happens if we as Enneagram sevens would lean into allowing ourselves to feel the discomfort without escaping it, but also without saying anything, like without having to respond or react immediately. Like, what happens if you just sit in the this feels uncomfortable and you allow yourself some processing time and then you come back later to do the addressing it part? And maybe you never come back and address it. Maybe you still cut ties, but you do it from a place of true clarity rather than that childlike pain point of I'm really scared of what's going to happen. So let me just go ahead and try to like move through this as well. What do you have for the sevens?
I don't have a lot different prepared than what you talked about with them, which naturally, because this is your everyday experience. So you know this one inside and out, upside down. I really feel like the good intention is dressed up in their optimism. They're always going to lift up the room, but what really is happening underneath that is escape. And I think the other thing with the Enneagram sevens that they can fall prey to is being very outcome driven more so than relationship focused. And we've talked about that through various different episodes and the relevance and importance to that in leadership. And when it comes to intentions, it really doesn't matter what our attention is. What matters is how we make someone else feel. And that can be a delicate thing to bridge in the workplace and in leadership because you also can't lead from a place where you're only concerned with how you make others feel. And you have to find the balance between that. And I think sometimes this outcome based with the good intention of we're going to get the thing done and we're going to lift up the team and keep it optimistic in the process. So that's really all I have to add in addition to your very well understanding, deep understanding of the Enneagram 7. So moving on to the 8, our Enneagram 8s, their shadow feminine will really show up with this control through force control, which I know that can seem very masculine in energy, but we'll get to that next month. It can also come through in the imbalance of the feminine energy as well. So they're really going to direct their outcomes through their intensity. They're going to lean into that intensity in order to dictate or create a certain outcome. And they will also override other people's input in the process. And because they, you know, growth edge to delegate for them, they'll trust themselves more than anyone else, which can be very dismissive in the way that the sevens are outcome focused, the eights are as well, just from a different priority or driver.
Mhm.
And their reality is really if I'm not in control, then I'll be vulnerable. So that's where they're trying to cover up with the control is their vulnerability. So I think their good intention is that they show up in strength. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be strong for the team. I'm going to be strong in my leadership. When actually, how that can be received and perceived by other people is that it's actually dominance, and nobody likes to be dominated. So, where you Enneagram 8s can return to your power is to let that power include trust of others and not just controlling the outcome.
Yeah, I think for the Enneagram eights in the workplace, what I see a lot of too is when they are triggered and met by another Enneatype that doesn't kind of bow down to the intensity or the title. See them really focused on titles in the workplace as well, and the assumption that title creates authority, which is not true. It actually doesn't. So I see them kind of get blindsided in the workplace when they have that realization that the title for many Enneatypes doesn't matter. That's not really something that they focus on. And when they find those people that are not going to bow down to the intensity or the title, they'll become a little bit more, it's not necessarily passive aggressive, but it's a weird type of aggression where they'll try to give the shiny objects or the shiny projects to somebody else and take away more and more of the pretty objects or the pretty projects from those people that are not bowing down to them. And what that actually does is undermines their own authority, their own dominance, because the rest of the world knows who the deliverers are. So it's weird. And then when that person that they gave it to has a hard time with that tough task, that other Enneatype, especially if it's a 3 or a 7, looks at the 8 and is like, maybe a different decision should have been made, but it's not mine. So I don't care if it burns, actually. And then it's hard to know like what to do with that when you have team members who look at that and are like, well, that's your decision and you should stand on it. I'm sure you were correct. You know everything, right? So that just becomes this weird power dynamic between some of those Enneatypes that somebody has to give in eventually, right? Or hopefully somebody, rather than giving in, becomes balanced and surrenders to being mission focused first. But if we're not paying attention, those Enneagram 8s can really lean into the hunkering down and digging in, and they'll just keep digging and digging and digging until there's nothing left to dig. So, granting yourself permission to just pause without losing any power. So, like, you're not losing any power if you just say, I'll give you an answer tomorrow, or I will make this decision in 2 hours, so that you can at least allow reality to catch up to your instinct. So really checking in with yourself of, is this a mission focused decision, or am I making this decision out of ego to prove my dominance? And that goes for any Enneatype. If you feel yourself trying to prove something, there's an imbalance and it's probably not going to go the way that you want it to go. Leaning into our Enneagram 9s. I feel like I love that these two are next to each other, the 8 and the 9, because they're so different, even though they're both gut points, their processing center is the same. They both have anger as an underlying emotional driver, but they're so very different in how the things can look. When the Enneagram 9 leans into that shadow feminine, it's like silent control or like a passive gridlock. Like I'm going to kind of hunker down because the perception is if I assert myself, I'll lose connection or there will be some type of fight. Whereas like peacekeeping feels safer than the expressions. So you minimize yourself for a while, except all of you Enneagram 9s know that you can only do that for so long before you are going to have a buildup of resentment, anger, all of the other things as well. And you're going to have that like bleh, all over everybody eventually. And you get caught up in this, a little bit of the Enneagram 6 energy is what I have seen too, where you avoid the tough conversations and then it can feel like lying by omission because then the other individuals are blindsided when you finally have had enough. And the item you're talking about when you have had enough feels very minuscule, except it isn't that one item. It's the 29 items before that, that this was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I see a lot of passive aggressiveness with the Enneagram 9 shadow feminine too, where there is a lot of gossiping and manipulation behind the scenes, where you try to get other people on your side before you actually address the thing, if you ever address the actual problem, right? Because typically respect is an underlying problem I see with Enneagram 9s, as they feel like they are not respected by the other Enneatypes. So they'll try to garner the troops to be in their back pocket so that they have a little army when they decide to fight with the other person who has no idea that this is even happening. What do you see with the 9s?
Well, yeah, they're another, withdrawal. We'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about withdrawal from a lot of different aspects. I mentioned that already. Here's another. And they're going to withdraw their opinion, decisions, their effort, their energy, their voice. But while they're busy going along externally, they're resisting the hell out of everything that's going on internally, and that can absolutely be sensed and picked up on. And the interesting thing is every family, every workplace, everywhere needs a disruptor. And that's the thing that Enneagram 9s are trying so hard to avoid is disrupting because as SJ mentioned, they want to stay connected and that disruption really seems like it's going to risk them connection. But I think their good intention is truly, keeping the peace. But the manipulation is that while they're busy withdrawing and erasing their opinions and their energy and everything, it actually leads to control because withdrawing from a system, if you're part of a team, you're part of a system. And if there's a part of that system that breaks down, the system breaks down. And so the withdrawal is going to essentially gridlock the system or cause it to break down as well. And so you're not keeping the peace. It's very not peaceful in the workplace. So for our Enneagram nines to return to their power, bring yourself with courage to speak before you disappear. Speak up, have your say, get it out, get it off your chest. Don't let it erupt and blow up. So, moving on to the Enneagram ones. I love that we're back at control like the Enneagram 8. But the Enneagram ones, we're going to control through being right, through integrity. We are going to use our standards and correctness to help others achieve more and direct them through the workplace and their part in the system. And they will always, an Enneagram 1, you're always going to position yourself as the right way until you can move from a right or wrong binary viewpoint of life. And also, you will strategically apply pressure through criticism or subtle judgment. And even if you're not openly being judgmental of other people, subtly, that's still going to be felt as well. This is such a hard lesson for me to learn, to really move and grow beyond this because it is so deeply embedded in the Enneagram 1. Like all these patterns are so deeply embedded, but until we land on the one that is yours, like you can follow along and be like, oh, that sounds annoying. Surely it is. But when you're standing in the shoes where this is your pattern, it's more than just the cognitive awareness to interrupt it and to do something different. So for Enneagram ones, what's really going on here underneath it is that I don't trust things will be okay unless I control how they're done because I for sure am going to do them the best. And so it's this good intention of a high standard. And yay for Enneagram ones in the workplace who set the bar, who raise the bar. Love that. That's great. But also, people will get really tired of jumping for that higher bar, really tired. Like that only is cute for us, Enneagram ones who want to keep getting better. Not everybody has that inner desire. So, underneath the good intention that we just have high standards and we're raising everyone up to do something better than what's been done before is actually control. The manipulation is control at the end of the day. So you gotta drop the armor. And to be able to return to your power, you gotta let go of needing to be right in order to feel safe.
Yeah, I mean, all of that. I think the subtle corrections that create energetic pressure is what I notice the most with the Enneagram ones. And when they are disappointed, they don't always address it cleanly, right? Like they don't say, XYZ disappointed me because I know you can do better. Instead, they often do things like just withdrawing warmth. So they create a little bit of like an emotional deficit within that dynamic to where the other individual feels slightly off, slightly wrong, or slightly out of alignment, like something's just off. And they start adjusting to try to get back into the Enneagram one's good graces. So I think that's the growth edge for the 1-2 is just acknowledging or giving yourself permission that you're allowed to be disappointed and still stay open. Like you can be disappointed and still not close that off to try to get people to jump higher because they want that, connection with you. And you don't have to remove warmth to create change. You can simply state the obvious, which is this disappointed me because I know you can do better and then move forward from there. So you haven't let go of your integrity standards. You haven't let go of the trying to help them do better and better. You're just allowing them to more honestly hear you and see like what the problem is rather than just hoping that they feel it. Like you just want them to feel the shame so that they do better. Except a lot of us Enneatypes don't really lean into shame. Like we're not shame driven. So you're going to miss a lot of those marks, and you will continue to be more and more and more disappointed by those people because they're not going to pick up on what you're really wanting from them or needing from them to do differently. So just staying more open and honest with the it's this rather than just hoping that they feel it. The Enneagram 2, I feel like this is like the emotional ledger, right? The giver with hooks, like give to get energy of, you don't want to be left behind, but you also, what I see with the Enneagram twos is they assume that if they do something for you, then they will get that back, which anything energetic, that's not going to work, right? Like that's not how anything energy works. If you're giving to get, then you're never going to get. But if you're actually giving because you want to do it, then that is when things return, when you have no expectation of the outcome. It's from an intentional place of just giving. This can leak out though to like I feel like Enneagram 2s like try to make you feel really guilty. Like, oh, I've done this for you 5 times and like I haven't seen you come back and do this yet. Like they'll do it in a playful, like passive way, but it still is very like guilt driven in the hope that you will, you know, give it back or over explain why that hasn't happened. So just giving yourself permission to ask for what you want. Just say what you want. Like, I want you to do X before I do something else for you. Like, I need something because I'm maxed out. Just be really honest about it.
For sure. I would say the shadow strategy, if we had to label it one word, would be martyrdom with the twos.
Mhm.
And what's really happening is they think if they meet your needs, you won't leave them. And so it's creating this connection for them. And so while their good intention is generosity, they're so giving, underneath it is actually this connection seeking, but through denying their own needs. So through that self-abandonment. And exactly what SJ said. Enneagram 2 is for you to return to your power. Just say what you need. You don't have to earn it. Just say it. So moving on to our Enneagram 3, our achievers. I would say if we put one word to their shadow strategy, it would be seduction. So they curate how they're perceived. They want to control the narrative of how other people see them, and they're going to perform in whatever way they need to show up that way, whether it's success, competence, so on and so forth, to move the needle and to get the tasks and assignments and projects done. And they're going to avoid showing anything that could diminish that image. So, what's really going on is if they can make you admire them, then they're safe. So, from an Enneagram 3 perspective, if you admire me, I am safe for you Enneagram 3s that are listening out there. And the honest truth is that this confidence that you're exuding, that's the good intention, but what's underneath it is approval management. You're actually working other people to approve of you. So, to return to your power, just let yourself be seen without all of the editing, without all of the performing, without that mask that you wear all day long until you're alone and safe and can take it off.
Yeah, I would say the only thing that I have to add for the Enneagram 3 is when that shadow feminine comes forward, they also align themselves with what they perceive will maintain success or with who they perceive can help them specifically be successful. So they don't lie outright. Yes, they do. They'll lie outright. They 100% will just like, it's this. But in their minds, they're optimizing perception. It's not a lie and it's not necessarily to hurt things. It's, I want to optimize the perception. And if I can reshape the narrative, then we can get back on track. And like, I'll come back around to those people that I just betrayed, maybe, right? And try to bring them back in. I would say for an integration shift for the Enneagram 3 is just say something true that doesn't benefit your image. Just say something true that doesn't benefit you in any way and just leave it at that without having to have the add-on of, and I am who led or came about or came up with. But say something true that doesn't benefit what you look like, how you perceive yourself, or how, more importantly, how you want other people to perceive you. just getting out of that whole control language, because that's really what all of these are, is a way to control. It's either a way to control the way people think, they see you, and it's also trying to avoid exposure. That's something within each of these Enneatypes. They're trying to avoid something: rejection, conflict, being misunderstood, losing connection, whatever it is. There's something that we're trying to avoid. So we're engineering or trying to engineer an outcome. The cost, though, for us with that, for each of the Enneatypes, is we don't actually know what's real then, because people are responding to our strategies and not who we authentically are or what our truth is.
So moving on to the four, take us
The
home.
four. Leaning into the four. What does the four do? I feel like the four is a little bit of a melodramatic, emotional pull, right? Like they want you to feel bad that you couldn't understand their intensity. They will deepen and lean into how misunderstood they were. They'll also really lean into a little bit of that Enneagram 2 martyrdom as well. And they almost passive aggressively make you feel like you don't have the depth to really be everything that they need, or to lean into even delivering the emotional weight of what something is. So everything will be doom and gloom. It will be martyrdom and terrible, and it's just, it becomes really intense in a very interesting way, not like the eight, but from that emotional stance. Like there's emotional manipulation that comes in of, how could you do this to me, is something I hear a lot of fours, even in the workplace. Like, I don't understand how so and so could do this to me. So you really take away, the Enneagram 4 takes away the power of that being internal, and they give it away of how that is external of them. And then therefore the blame is also external to them if something didn't work out.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the Enneagram fours, what they're really doing is this theme of if you feel me deeply, I matter. They get their relevance, their identity through their emotions, and also the response that they get from other people based upon those emotions. And the good intention, I think, is the depth of them. They'll dress it up as just being a very deep person when actually underneath that, what's happening is that they're manipulating others for emotional leverage, for an emotional response. And we talk about emotions a lot, that it's energy and motion, right? So there's this aspect of also gaining energy from other people, even if they're not extroverts, through this emotional, if you want to call it emotional manipulation tactics. So, Enneagram 4s, your real return to power and balance here is to feel all that you feel without others needing to witness it or respond to it. Just own your feelings, move through them, and then move on. So, we made it all the way around through all of our types. And this episode really pulled back the curtain on this part of leadership that most people would rather keep all dressed up and tucked away nice and tidy. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction if it was your first to the shadow feminine. And hopefully, if it wasn't your first, you saw it from a different angle. Not the angle where we're all polished, where we're empathetic and intuitive and we care, but really in the places where those exact same qualities will quietly distort into the control, the martyrdom, the attachment, the withdrawal, plenty examples of withdrawal today, and even emotional pressure. So we walked through how this shows up across the entire Enneagram, the giving that creates obligation, the emotional intensity that hooks your attention, the silence that controls outcomes, loyalty that gets tested instead of trusted. Absolutely none of it is random. It's all patterned, it's all predictable. And once you know the Enneagram, you will know exactly where it's going to show up and how. And most of it is happening beneath conscious awareness for most of the people living out these behaviors. And that is why this work matters so much, because you can't lead cleanly while unconsciously pulling on other people, and you can't build trust while subtly managing outcomes through energy instead of truth. Real leaders They require something deeper than just self-awareness. It requires self-honesty, and it requires that at the level of pattern, knowing your own patterns and knowing how to interrupt them. And that is where the like all of the work is so real and makes such deep shifts in real time. So you can hear this episode, you can recognize yourself in it, you can even agree with it, and still default right back to the same patterns tomorrow and watch yourself do it. Because self-awareness alone isn't going to equate to change. Those patterns are not cognitive. They're wired into your nervous system and they're wired into your identity, which means they don't dissolve with mere insight. They dissolve with interruption. And that's exactly what we do inside Stronger Together. I also have to be honest, if you want to be stronger with the people around you, if you want to lead in connectedness, you can't do that from a vacuum and a place of walking that path alone. And inside Stronger Together, it's not surface level awareness and it is not mindset loops either. We take the patterns that you just heard us walk through and explain, and they get interrupted in real time. So instead of giving to be needed, you give without attachment. Instead of withholding to stay safe, you can speak up without pressure. Instead of pulling for validation, you can lead without controlling. And instead of managing perceptions, you'll hold presence without having to do any performing or inauthentic action along the way. And the truth that your system already knows is that you don't want more information. You want to feel different in those matters that moment, in the moments that matter. You don't want to walk away from another moment and be like, oh, I dropped the ball again, or I should have, could have, would have done things different, if only. Instead, you walk into a conversation and you don't have to manage yourself. You can lead without second guessing your tone or your timing or your energy. And your presence can land clean with those that you're leading. And the shift doesn't come from trying harder, it comes from doing this work in a space where you're seen, challenged, and recalibrated in real time. So, if something in this episode activated you, good. That activation is not a problem. It's an invitation. Come into Stronger Together. Get in the room where your patterns don't get to hide, nor will you be shamed for them. You'll laugh about them and you'll feel lighter and grateful that they've been pulled to the surface. Your leadership will get sharper, cleaner, and more powerful. And you'll finally stop performing your growth and start embodying it. If you'd like to join us in the Stronger Together space, simply go to www.strongertogetherinstitute.com and you can join and grab your seat there. And we will be back here in 2 weeks. And until then,